I'm on you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 99 of IGEL Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got Chris Feeney with me. Chris, can you believe we're almost at 100?
I'm excited, man. We need to come up with a opening jingle, right, or some
Mm.
kind of entrance, like walk-on music for the 100th episode. That would be amazing.
You
But
know,
uh,
if
but
you listen to all my other podcasts, not XenTegra, XenTegra's a company, we do intro music, um, but all mine are just jump in and go for it.
yeah,
And then for a brief moment, I have like a moment of thinking, well, we need to really dress this thing up a little bit. And then we get into the content, what I call content with context. Um, and the content is so good in these podcasts that I forget about needing intro music and we just move on.
yeah,
You got a lot of podcasts out there with bad content, but they got good intro music. I'm like, well, that's not what I'm focused on.
certainly. We
Hey,
will
it's
not
been a
have bad intro music if we implement it, but we do have great content for today.
yeah.
Nice. See how I teed that up?
Hey, we've missed a couple weeks. I think you guys have been busy over there. You want to give us a little recap of what's been going on and why you've been so busy?
Yeah, so a lot has been happening both on the product updates front. We had similar to earlier this year, we had the Disrupt in Miami, we had the Disrupt in Munich in mid September, and then we've had a few of the road shows here in the United States market for what we're calling the IGEL Now and Next. So Disrupt is now going to be transitioning to what we call now and next. And we've had a number of those sort of one-day events around the country. So a lot's been going on at the same time in parallel. We've been announcing quite a bit. So there's definitely new blog content out there, which we'll be picking, and we got plenty to choose from, and more to come. But lots been going on. Internally, I haven't really announced this on LinkedIn. I've actually changed roles within the company. I'm moving into officially a product marketing role. I've been doing a product management component of that with the Imprivata agent we're building, but more officially, I'll be doing a lot of the product marketing components here tied to the vertical solutions aspect of where we're focusing our attention, right? So the healthcare, manufacturing, financial services, retail, and federal government, that type of thing. So those are the key areas, not to exclude education. We do have some for that too, but a lot of it is like you partner with a lot of companies. We do as well. And today we're going to talk about one company that is hot
Yeah.
as pancakes off the waffle
Well,
iron, whatever it is.
I'm
So,
gonna twist what you said though. So our blog today, the title of it is Island Browser. Island and IGEL redefine the enterprise endpoint. I'm going to take a little credit real quick. This is written by James Millington from September 17th of this year. I'm gonna briefly state this, and I swear it's true. I'm the person that introduced IGEL and Island to each other a year and a half, 2 years ago. That's a guaranteed thing. I said, Island, are you working with IGEL? IGEL, are you working with Island here? Y'all need to go get together in the IGEL Ready program. So having said that, this topic, not Island specifically, but Island, yes. But this topic is extremely important to me as a consumer of the technology, as well as someone who's trying to help customers figure it out. And I have been, fortunately, and this is a little pitch for my own internal folks listening. Fortunately, I've been on a couple customer meetings lately, not nearly enough this year. I don't go on nearly enough customer meetings, but a couple customer meetings lately, and they are very confused around published apps, um, server desktops, VDI desktops, enterprise managed browsers, SaaS versus legacy x86, deliver versus deploy, stream versus presents. And I could just go on and on about those different technologies and concepts. It is a very it is a very appropriate topic to be covering over and over again. I literally stood in front of a group of clients, I don't know, a month ago now, and explained the enterprise browser concept, the Island solution, the Citrix solution, the other companies that are coming out with solutions. And at the end, some guy raised his hand to recap the whole thing for the audience. And what he described was publishing a browser in Citrix and giving access to a web app through a published browser in Citrix. And I said, that's absolutely correct in 1999. It's 2024, and that is absolutely wrong. And I kind of, was a little frustrated because I just spent 15, 20 minutes explaining modern day browser, enterprise browser technologies and secure private access technologies. And in his head, he translated that to publishing a browser in Citrix, like so many people did so successfully for so many years, and a lot still do. But that's where this conversation today is super relevant.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So, kudos to introducing us to Island. There's a lot that's happened really since then. If you went to Miami, for the listeners here, Island was a platinum sponsor, top level sponsor, and if we only got introduced a year or so ago, whatever it was, uh, that's amazing. And they've also been sponsoring these now and next events. So there is a ton of momentum going on, um, as customers begin to look at and examine sort of their strategy. We've talked many times over about digital workspace strategy. You obviously lead with that in a lot of the conversations, but now we're starting to see successful proof of concepts, if you will, that are now moving into production purchases, and they're not talking like 100 users, and they're talking thousands of users taking advantage of switching to this island browser approach. So we're very excited about the partnership and the future there.
Hey, Chris, let me do a couple things on you real quick. Number one, the XenTegra commercial. If you're working with an island partner, or in this case, an IGEL partner, and they're not bringing solutions like this, conversations like this proactively to you and advising you, then you might be working with the wrong partner. You mentioned Miami, right? You're talking about your IGEL conference you guys had in the Miami area a couple of almost a year ago, 6 months ago, 8 months ago now.
Yeah, it was given a number of conferences. Yeah, it was back early this year in uh, early May, essentially, and we'll do it again. We've already announced it. We'll do it again in late March in Miami at the Fontainebleau
So,
Hotel.
so the reason I asked the question I did, because if you didn't go to the one in this past year, and your partner you currently work with around Citrix, around Island, around VMware, around Omnessa, around Nutanix, around IGEL, didn't help you get there by maybe funding a free pass or a discounted pass, and they're not helping you next year get there, another reason to work with XenTegra. It's a big point of pride for me. If you're listening to this and you're not getting help getting to these conferences, this particular now and next from IGEL and others, then maybe you should consider working with us, or maybe take this offer and take it to your existing partner and ask them to step up for you.
Yeah, no, you guys have done a great job of that for certainly our conferences, but more than that, really, many of the ones that you guys sponsor. But there is a ton of stuff that's shared content-wise. We call it now, so the now, and then of course the future, the next, right? What's coming? And so what we're talking about today is a now. This is a available now kind of thing. Um, and we've got we're starting to see some successful customers begin to roll out, and we're capturing sort of where their stories are there, and why they chose to go in the route of the island browser, for example. So, but certainly love to get your perspective on the use of the browser, since you, I believe, are using
So,
it internally, correct?
well, we are. I'm gonna hit you with two topics. The first topic is, Chris, in the enterprise, in commercial segments, in mid market, in SMB, what browser do you think? What browser do you think most organizations use today?
Without knowing the numbers, it's either going to be Edge or Chrome.
So it's going to be the consumer version of Chromium, which will be Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, right?
Correct.
What those same people that are using that on their work computer, what do they use on their personal computer?
Probably the same.
How much sense does that make?
It makes so interestingly, right, from a consumer perspective, right? They're generally going to log into the browser with an account that has all their shortcuts or favorites and all that other stuff to kind of keep it consistent. The problem is it's not managed. It's you
Well,
know
let me restate my
yeah,
question. From a security perspective, how much sense does that make?
very little
Very
because
none.
yeah,
Very little, as in none. So why do we use a consumer browser in our corporate enterprise lives or corporate lives? I mean, it makes sense. Maybe we use it in our commercial life, sure. But how we this has gone on, this madness has gone on for way, 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 way too long. The other topic I'll give you leading into this, and then we'll jump into the blog. I mean, the podcast more. I'm sorry, the blog a little more seriously here, and actually cover the actual content. But the other part is that my comment a while ago around how successful people have been using Citrix to publish a virtual app, to publish a virtual desktop of some type, or to publish the application in question here, which is a browser where we could get our hands around the security of it and we could optimize the delivery of it, has to some degree retarded how fast this takes off because we had an answer for so long that wasn't the long-term answer. It wasn't the answer that most people are going to go to in the long run, a secure, managed, private access enabled, multi-factor, single sign-on enabled browser. If the world of applications evolves, and had it evolved faster, the concept of just using a lightweight, manageable, securable, access granting browser would more rapidly overtake your presented workloads like presented apps and presented desktops, what a lot of people call streamed. It's really not streamed, it's presented. Had the applications gone along faster, this would have taken off quicker. And it's still the applications that are holding us back. But there's absolutely no doubt this thing has picked up steam, the concept of SaaS, SaaS applications. And the browser is truly the future of most application delivery. And we can't do it in the complicated way that the other players have done it through presenting it through a published app or something. And we need to take advantage of the endpoint resources like IGEL. So IGEL plus an enterprise browser creates a very capable solution that's also very securable simultaneously.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that having sat through a number of presentations from Island, uh, one of the things they throw up there is the most widely used application in uh, corporate America. I'll just go with enterprise, is the browser. And then, of course, they go into some of the challenges with that, as you're kind of outlining, right? Some of the security and manageability, that type of thing. But I never really thought about it. Like, you're right. I mean, a
Chris,
lot of,
I'm going to push back on that one super quick. The most widely used application in corporate America is Windows, aka Explorer.exe. The second most widely used is the browser. If we can mitigate Windows, which is a very beautiful, very capable, but unsecurable thing, with something that's more securable, like a enterprise managed browser, then all of a sudden we don't need Windows anymore. Ta-da, IGEL.
right. Not worrying about securing the OS as much. Now I have a secure OS plus a very secure browser, meaning data on the endpoint is zilch zero nada, right? It's a great story, and I know um, your security focused team has really latched on to Island as a tremendous, among many other vendors that you work with. But this one certainly, I didn't really know about them at the beginning of the year, and then I started learning more about Island and what they do, and really caught my attention once I understood sort of, what's different about Island versus, something else.
So, Chris, most people
And
listen to the podcast, they don't watch it, but I literally just pulled up my screen my production environment, which, by the way, if you work with a partner that sells you stuff but doesn't use that stuff, maybe you got the wrong partner. But we use Island, we use Citrix, we use VMware, we use Parallels, we use the technology. And by the way, we use a lot of these on top of IGEL as the endpoint. But we definitely use Island. My entire team uses Island. And you know what the training curve was to get my team to adopt Island?
like maybe 5 minutes.
We didn't do anything. We just told them it's there. We're going to push the download, start using this. And we literally, from our managed systems, we removed Chrome from our managed systems, and they really didn't have much of a choice. I would love to remove Edge, but we don't have that version of Windows deployed. But that's doable
Yeah.
too.
No, it is. I mean, just Barry was able to show me, when you guys first started using it and walked us through. I was like, wow. And then he told us some of the things that as you saw on that, but all the different apps you're accessing through the Island browser. So, um,
So,
uh,
Chris, I think we've done a really good job covering the intro as to why it's important that we cover it. The next section talks about what is the Island browser. I know we've covered that at a high level. You want to just kind of cover this content real quick so that we don't miss it?
Yeah, so it's a Chromium-based browser. As we kind of touched on earlier, there's a lot of Chromium-based browsers out there. Edge, Chrome, actually, not Firefox, but Brave or Blaze or something like that. There's a number of them out there. But what's different, underline the word enterprise, right? It's strategically focused for companies, right? And more specifically, to be able to manage that, lock it down. So it comes with a very user-friendly interface, as you mentioned. Just log in, use it, and it's like any browser. But it has a ton of security policies, access controls, data protections, you know, so you got that. It basically comes down to this, right? Been doing this a long time. They've married the security components with the user convenience. That's always a bigger challenge, right? If you're heavy on security, user convenience suffers. If it's too convenient, then security suffers. They've figured out and have a product that marries those two together so that the user has a great experience and you're not risking, as the Navy says, you're not giving up the ship, if you will. So,
Yeah. Chris, a couple quick points. The fact that it's Chromium based, it should work, right? And the only reason it wouldn't work is if your policies limited the functionality. And if it's Chromium based, it should be easily supportable by the various application vendors. If they're not able to support it rather easily, then they're probably just being lazy.
yeah, well, it's from an operating system perspective, it's ubiquitous, right? It can run on Windows, Linux, uh, Apple. I mean, just, it can be used across a lot of different platforms that are out there. And obviously, we're very excited about that as an app on native IGEL OS.
Bye. My daughter's leaving to head off back to college, and
Oh,
I'm in.
hey, if you need, yep, see you, Morgan. Have a great time.
Bye. Um, So, Chris, the next section here talks about how does it work, and I'm going to say this. Let me scroll through real quick. Everything you're getting ready to cover is mostly about security. But I'm going to hit on this fact real quick. We've got several enterprise browser solutions that we use as XenTegra because we have so many partners we work with, and we definitely want to explore those technologies and make sure they're right for us and right for our clients. Most of what you're going to cover in the next section is about securing the workloads. But I'm going to give Island a quick plug here. The performance of their solution is really good in addition to the security benefits, and the UI is great as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because last week they were presenting at our Boston event, and one of the things that the lady presenting said is that because they're able to block out a lot of the phishing ads and all that other junk, it actually has improved the user experience, the speed, that kind of thing. And so, and so I think she was using it on a consumer kind of level, at home kind of thing. But you've been using it certainly. Curious to see, what you've noticed in comparison to doing that same thing with another browser,
Yeah.
maybe the built-in one.
I have a super easy statement. I use it by default. If it didn't perform well, I'd go back to the other one as long as my IT team would let me.
Yeah, and that's a mark of great product. If it's easily adoptable and users accept it, then they'll continue using it. Um, you're not giving them a reason to go back to something that they had before or a feature of this or whatever like that, and certainly from a performance perspective. So,
Yeah. All right. First section here says changing the narrative on secure access. What are they trying to cover here?
well, obviously, like most browsers, modern browsers, there's an identity component, right? So you showed earlier, right? You log in, it says, "Good morning, Andy." And along with that comes the user context, the what you have access to, security controls, conditional access. Are you coming from a certain location, whatever, but it all starts with identity, you're not just, a regular browser, generally speaking, that is not unique, right? So they kind of can marry that. Here's a friendly user interface. You have to authenticate into it, and that can be certainly username and password, but also, MFA type solutions, get you in, and then now, okay, what applications do you specifically have access to? And also single sign-on into a lot of those applications, so you don't have to log in again and again and again. But then the conditional access pieces, right? You're on a certain device or your location, network, whatever, private, internal um, applications. And I love the last statement in that first paragraph there, removing the need for a separate VPN. That is one of the things you talk about a lot. I would love to hear you hit upon that one in terms of generally speaking, you usually say if you're using a VPN in today's world, you're doing it wrong, right? So
which is 95% of the companies I talk to, and some of them even proudly tell me about their VPN solution. And I'll stand by the statement. If you're using a VPN for anyone other than the system's admins to give your users access to a VPN, if they're using a VPN in 2024, you're doing it wrong. I don't know why in the world you would take the risk on opening up such a big port, big network port with all these that much network access into your environment. No one should
yeah,
be using a VPN in 2024.
yeah, but I think it's kind of rounding out that first,
Hey, Chris,
uh,
but real quick, this is a rhetorical question. Why should no one be using a VPN right now? The answer I gave was because it opens up too much of a security gap. The other part is it's not good for the users. Watching a user go through making a VPN connection just to launch an application, they don't have to do that.
yeah, no, it's great. I was having this conversation literally yesterday. Inside the walls, I have a laptop, I use it, and I can connect to my stuff. I go home, I gotta use VPN. Well, do you have it such that you have to first set up the VPN before you can then get to others, and then it kind of the conversation was like, yeah, we're actually heading towards, I want to say Zscaler kind of solution where, controlling that network, but it's the user experience, right? And also the unmanaged devices. This is another one, right? Managing corporate level software on an unmanaged device. Is that where you really want to go? Just to give somebody access from some device somewhere else. So Island's browser brings a tremendous thing. You could technically install it anywhere, but you're managing that specific app on that unmanaged device. You know, um, obviously with IGEL, we have a managed device. Now we have a managed browser, so it's a great combination. Just give them a secure OS. You don't have to worry about it in country, out of country, wherever. Now you have a managed browser that brings that same level of security with tremendous
Yeah.
user convenience.
Hey, Chris, that's a really good topic because you mentioned a minute ago, I launched Island and it said, "Hey, good morning, Andy." It didn't ask me for authentication or anything. That's because I'm on a managed endpoint. And that managed endpoint allows me to have long-term access to Island and the back-end resources. It still challenges me occasionally. However, I've got other devices that are not managed, and it is more frequent to ask me for my credentials in Island using my cloud-hosted, my cloud-based identity. But it's a different set of rules when it's an unmanaged machine.
Yeah, and that's nice to know that when you implement that type of security, um, so the user is say, hey, okay, now I know why this is the case, and it's easy to get through that wall, if you will, that gate, and then get to where I'm doing, right? So it's not like, oh, it's so terrible. I'm getting prompted every single time I click on something, right? No, just, hey guys, you're in a new location, or on a device that, not quite sure about. So I'm going to put up a layer in front of you just to make sure. It's kind of the same thing, like maybe this is a bad analogy, but you go to pay for a credit card. It's always nice when somebody flips that credit card over to or asks you for identity or whatever like that. It's rare to see that these days, but when they look and check the signature right, you know,
Yeah.
maybe in years past it was, but um I had a friend of mine I used to work with. He literally had written on the back, please ask for ID, if his credit card got stolen. Now you can just cancel the card if you recognize it's gone. But that was one of the things he was using, and you know,
Not to
sometimes maybe
go
they did.
not to go to that topic too far, but why we
Yep.
don't have chip and pin here in the United States, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next section talks about a new approach to data protection. What are they covering there?
Well, again, similar to IGEL's story of read only. no data on the endpoint other than basically a configuration of the device. All the data you're accessing, whether you're trying to download a PDF or copy and paste, screenshot stuff. I mean, they have a tremendous amount of data protection challenges, right? You're talking about corporate data or patient data, or stuff that gets sold on the black internet market, if you will, that you're trying to keep, away from, or certainly, exposing yourself to litigation and you know, lawsuits and stuff like that. So they've got a tremendous amount of what I would say is, um, I'll go with user-friendly security features, right? Heavy on security, conditionally based in some cases, or on by default type of thing. But they're all about protecting that data, which means you can, all right, now that I know that those protections are in place, I can allow for an unmanaged device to log into the Island browser and use and do their work without worrying about data being left on that device or taken away. So, and again, with a lot of the movement of applications to the cloud, and data accessible from almost anywhere, with you have the credentials to do so, and you're not necessarily putting protections in front of that. Yeah, it's a huge concern, and so they have a great solution for that. And again, going back to it with a user-friendly interface. So
Chris, would it be fair to say that Island being born at the time it's born, that it's very cloud first oriented in data?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Well, and I think just in general, browsers, yeah, like browsers all this time have been kind of cloud first. They didn't know to call it cloud, but it's always been about consuming internet resources. And now, for the past, I don't know, 10 years or so, it's been store it back to the
Yeah,
cloud first. And then Island, of course, being born in the Chromium world at the time has been born, is obviously going to be cloud first. And just, eliminating the endpoint operating system in general kind of lends itself to that strategy.
so this is a great question because this is sort of what I'm talking about here. So, and we've talked about this before. Like you're at a hotel kiosk, right? And you have a browser option on this kiosk kind of thing, right? You log in to access office.com, right? And maybe you got MFA to get in there, right? Um, if you walk away from that hotel, maybe you were there to kind of print something to a printer before you go to a meeting or whatever. We've all had that, or maybe you print your boarding pad, whatever it is, right? But you've then when you leave that machine, one of my concerns earlier from a security perspective is making sure that if somebody else comes in behind me, they're not be able to get in to my stuff. And some of these things are designed to kind of clear out the prior bruises, but you're talking about corporate level stuff. It could be emails, whatever it is, but you're allowing that to come up on a unmanaged device in this case. And so uh, they would certainly have a scenario there where, yeah, that's never not going to happen. Um, and but how many scenarios have been there out there where somebody did not clear it out or whatever, and somebody comes in behind them, and next thing you know, they open up and there's,
Chris, think of the hotel kiosk like this. I mean, as you mentioned, it's a very, very highly managed, reboots back to a gold image device. I walk away from that thing every time going, I wonder who architected this, and I wonder if it really is really going to remove my data or not. But what if the browser itself natively did that? What if the IGEL OS under that browser natively did that, which it does, versus Windows, which does the exact opposite unless you take actions? What if they just natively did those types of functions, and the browser natively did it and the OS natively did it? I'd walk away from that device going, yeah, I'm pretty confident that it got handled.
yeah, that's a great point. I'm not ever really confident that those kiosk type devices actually have completely cleared out. So as much as possible, try to avoid even using that to access kind of corporate level data or even
I,
personal stuff for that matter.
I do it all the time, but I go to a virtual desktop in the process to give myself reassurance that I don't have to rely on the local endpoint for much.
Yeah, definitely. But we're very much security conscious. I will say this, not naming names or whatever, but I have had colleagues where they didn't necessarily clear things out, and I had to I was watching. I was like, "Hey guys, we need to clear that out before you reboot or just reset the machine or whatever it is, right? Just make sure you don't walk away and not do that."
Yeah.
So
Now add to all that the craziness of 1/5 of the time the devices is some kind of patch state where it's got issues where it doesn't boot properly and doesn't work anyway. That's a whole other podcast, but this would simplify that a ton too.
Yeah.
Hey, all right. So the third section, name of it is Island and IGEL. This is where you're bringing it together. Deliver agility, unmatched security, and optimize workflows. It's got, I don't know, 5 or 6 bullets here. First one is zero trust access for applications to protect.
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with Zero Trust, it's a framework. There's no one product that delivers all the um, uh, scenarios under this Zero Trust model. But the idea is basically this. You're at a Starbucks or whatever like that, and I don't trust you coming from wherever you are in the world, essentially. And so there's uh, things that are put in place to try to mitigate risk, right? So I'm going to try to, along the way, try to identify you and make sure you are who you are. Obviously, heavy, heavy, heavy security, but where do you bring about the ability to actually use that? And I'll keep pounding on it because my career seems to have revolved around balancing user convenience with security, going back at this point 20 some odd years. And so bringing these two together, obviously IGEL, on the device eliminates a bunch of endpoint attack service in the 90s, right? 95%. Now throwing in a browser that is designed to protect data and also be user friendly for accessing applications that you will be managing corporately. So that is what we're talking about, zero trust, plus putting in those protections, right? If you switch to another device, new location, you're going to get it's intelligent to know that, hey, something's there. I need to prompt Andy to reload to authenticate again or identify themselves.
Yeah. I think the hotel kiosk scenario we just talked about is a great example of the opposite of this
Yeah.
versus natively doing it. Frictionless onboarding and administration as it
So
relates to both IGEL and Island.
I would like on the island side, since you mentioned it earlier, I would love to hear your take on when you began implementing it internally and on and how long did it take to set up the administration behind it, right?
So I have two approaches, right? One is my non-managed devices where I had to go and install the browser like my home computer, which we allowed. At the same time, I had my managed devices where Island was pushed to it, and it would just became an icon on my taskbar. On the taskbar, it was super simple. I just had to launch it the first time. It prompted me for logical stuff like who are you, what's your username, what's your password. I'm going to send you a multi-factor challenge. Boom, done. Then it was pre-populated with a handful of logos or icons like, for example, our Salesforce and our internal ServiceNow site and our other internal SaaS applications that we use. Um, and same thing happened on the non-managed side. The only difference in the whole scenario was on the non-managed side, they sent out an email link and you had to go download the app and install it yourself because it was not controlled by the corporation. Other than that, it was logical stuff that anybody in 2024 that uses technology in general as a consumer should be able to logically figure out.
Yeah, and it kind of bleeds into the next bullet point on the easy app installation and I'm assuming easy updates as well. Um, from a IGEL perspective, this will be an OS 12 specific uh, integration. It's not going back to version 11, as far as I know. That's definitely not going to happen. So
Yeah.
we have the app portal. We talked about before. And so that's where a customer would go to, consume and pull down the Island app. And then through updates, maybe Island comes out with a new version update. That's where it would come down and be managed and pushed out as needed from the familiar IGEL management console pieces.
So the next bullet, familiar browser interface and options, and I'll just throw this one in, which is extremely valuable to me and why I default to it today. Search engine by default is Google. If I use Edge, which I don't dislike Edge, but if I use Edge by default, it's Bing, and I'm having to constantly go back and change it to Google if I want it to be Google. With the Chromium version of Island, it's all automatically Google, and that is super helpful for me.
Yeah. And just from a the other parts of using a browser, you got the tabs, you got the favorites or whatever like that. It's not like an unfamiliar browser look and feel, right? It looks great. And also I'm sure you can customize the heck out of it, corporate branding kind of stuff, right?
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
Um,
Um, Next one says increased enterprise performance. You mentioned that a while ago. I mentioned it a while ago. It doesn't hurt your performance. It helps your performance. The only thing that can complicate that is if your administrative staff has put lots of extra things in place that actually breaks things. But as far as the app itself natively, you're going to get a better experience probably than you're getting today.
Yeah, and likewise with an operating system, right? We have many stories of IGEL being installed on these older devices or even, newer ones, of course, but let's go with the older ones where it was running and maybe a bloated and over the time, it just got slower and slower or whatever. Um, IGEL running on that same device, pretty lightweight, taking full advantage as a Linux OS of the hardware that's on the device and seeing increased performance, snappiness, the launching of apps, things like that. Therefore, users not clamoring for a newer, faster, more expensive device, right? So those are definitely some of the things that iGel has brought to the table with running natively on the device, or in some cases, just using the familiar UD Pocket, which is in my hand here.
Yeah. So Chris, two more quick topics. The last bullet here is reduce power consumption. Windows for all its glory and all that it does. Client server applications that require the client on the endpoint and the server on the back end. If we can move to SaaS where you get economies of scale, if we can lower the power consumption on the endpoint and the applications that have to run on the endpoint, there's an opportunity for ecological impact.
Yeah, absolutely. We certainly have seen that with customers running our OS, especially on devices that maybe leverage a battery. It could be a laptop, it could be like a roaming cart, WoW, workstation on wheels in healthcare, where they are designed to run off battery, and they've seen where they've increased the time and usability of that because Joe's running. We're not taxing the hardware or whatever, or lots of apps that are taxing the CPU, that type of thing. Um, and so, and you can see this real time, right? Whether it's just looking at, Task Manager running, or if you use some of our other IGEL ready vendors that have those analytics type tools where you can literally see, hey, what's happening on the endpoint, and see, some of the statistics around the power consumption of the device. So very much leading into our sustainability, right? The longer term use of these devices. So.
So, Chris, we've had all this conversation around Island and IGEL and how they make sense together. Now we're going to address the most debatable topic that I come across, which goes back to the very beginning. And we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, because we did cover it in the beginning. If an organization has moved to a significant number of SaaS apps, which pretty much all of them have. If you're like my company, born in 2012, you probably are mostly SaaS apps. If you're like most organizations, you are 50% or higher SaaS apps, or let's just say 50%. This is a conversation you have to be having around enterprise browser technologies. The idea that you need a VDI, or you need a server desktop, or you need to publish applications might be very applicable to your organization. It might just be for one legacy application that you're either getting off of or you won't be getting off of anytime soon. I don't know. But if you've got the ability to run mostly SaaS apps, or you will in the upcoming years, the concept of an enterprise browser like Island is a no-brainer, and it's from a simplicity, cost savings, security perspective, user experience perspective, something you've got to be considering as an organization, as a consultant and as a partner, and I mean real partner for our clients. I'm going into legacy shops that are buying and procuring and using us for VDI technologies and app publishing technologies, and making, helping us make payroll every month. And I am proactively getting in front of this conversation because most of them are not thinking about an enterprise browser strategy going forward, and they would be remiss not to.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to just you look over the course of, the last, 2 decades, right? The adoption of new technologies, and I think of probably the most equivalent one is the mobile phone, right? It's all about the apps, usability. There was a time when I was a CrackBerry guy, right? BlackBerry was my thing. The reason I went to the iPhone is because it was better performing app on a handheld device. In this case, I needed to bring up Google Maps, and it fired up right away on the iPhone, whereas it took a long time on the BlackBerry. And it took me a while to get, do I want to go to the touchscreen, right? But I got used to that, as many millions and millions of people have at this point. But it was all about the apps, and then throw in the usability of those apps and the features and functionality that I can pretty much do. I can do my expense reports. I can do, I mean, a lot of things, right? You can do from that device, banking. I mean, you name it, right? I mean, and you can function, whereas you don't necessarily need that Windows desktop to deliver those things, right? You can use a browser and bring up that and operate out of that all day long, if you will, to do your job, and therefore reducing the need for a desktop virtualization scenario. There's going to be legit scenarios for that, but this is a game changer in terms of what it brings to offer. Just out of curiosity, how many apps were you previously using in a Windows environment that you've been able to maybe switch over to just the browser itself, the Island browser?
Chris, here, almost every application we have is SaaS-based, including the productivity apps. The one application that my generation of employees is addicted to that would be hard to get off of is client-based Outlook.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would concur. I can use the browser, the base version of Outlook. I prefer the Windows installed version for different reasons. There's some feature functionality I'm used to, and it's probably one of these things that I'm a legacy guy. I've been using Outlook as a Windows app for 20 some odd years. At some point, I'll probably break free, but right now, I kind of prefer that particular one.
Hey, Chris, I'm gonna change my answer real quick. Outlook is very important to my organization, the generation of employees that I have. The application in my organization that they're most addicted to that is not browser accessible natively is Windows.
That's a good one, Andy. I like that.
And I apply that to some of my customer base too that really could move to an enterprise browser as their one and only solution, but their employee base wants everything in one digital workspace, and the digital workspace that currently rules them all is Windows.
Yeah, they've had quite a run there, and I guess,
Well,
and I've seen,
let's use IGEL as the example. What's the number one thing that IGEL connects to?
geez, um,
Windows.
yeah. At the end of the day, Windows through some mechanism, right? Citrix,
Yeah.
Horizon, AVD, getting that familiar Windows desktop experience.
And that's not a technology issue, that's a people issue.
Yeah, that's a uh, giving them that familiar things, or there may be a technical piece where that app they're using or apps has to still rely on a Windows-based framework, but you can still deliver it virtually. That long tail of Windows we've referred to it
Yeah.
before.
If you're a serious accountant, I see that you might need Microsoft Excel, the full-blown desktop version. But for most average hacks like myself, the web-based one works just fine.
Yeah, and it's getting better and better. I mean, they always, if you look at, I mean, heck, I mean, we will be shortly, I think, having um an update on terms of, hey, UMS is our main management tool, but we're moving in more and more features to the web app. And we had an internal one yesterday where we're going to be announcing new features that have been slowly migrating. So,
Yep.
um, yeah, I
So,
anticipate that with anything of those apps.
so Chris, good discussion. I think we're past time, but it's always a good discussion, and I think this will be very useful for our clients as well as Island clients as well as IGEL clients. Good. We covered a lot here. Um, I think the future is interesting, and I think an enterprise browser like Island with a very secure, simplified, high performance operating system, cost effective operating system like IGEL is something that every organization should be considering. And partners like us, vendors like you guys can help make that a reality.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one thing I'll finish with is I've got your glasses now, so we look similar. The only thing you need to do is grow the little beard thing that I'm kind of experimenting with.
No, my wife won't let me, so not gonna happen.
All right, always a pleasure, Andy.
All right, sir. Thank you. Have a good rest of your week.
You too, brother.